Okay, I will welcome to this workshop hosted by the ECR Hub. For those interested in applying to the BCSER IMP solicitation, that is NSF funding to train STEM education researchers. If you could go to the next slide. Today, our agenda today is we're going to have a very brief overview of the ECR Hub and the resources available. Then Dr. Jenny Lewis from NSF is going to give you an overview of the BCSER IMP solicitation. And then we have a short presentation by 4 current BCSER Institute PIs to give you an overview of sort of what the kinds of institutes that are currently funded. Then you'll have a few minutes to workshop an idea, and we'll go into breakout rooms where you'll have a chance to interact with one of the BCSER PIs. So we'll start now. I'm going to turn it over to David Miller, who is the PI of the ECR Hub, to give you an overview of the Hub.
Thank you so much, Terry. Hello, I'm David Miller, Senior Researcher at the American Institutes for Research and PI of the ECR Hub, which is an intellectual partner to NSF, led by American Institutes for Research, working in close partnerships with 3 universities. And I've had the pleasure to work with Dr. Terry Pickett, specifically Georgia State University, with regards to the BCSER institutes that we will talk about today. Next slide. Okay, and so as the ECR Hub, we're guided by 2 overarching goals: to extend the influence and reach of existing ECR investments, and to build career development opportunities, especially for underrepresented institutions and scholars in the ECR portfolio. And so the work that so the workshop today is connected especially to that second goal here. We target 3 target audiences: current ECR core and ECR BCSER grantees, prospective ECR core and ECR BCSER grantees, and stakeholders in other NSF EDU programs. So obviously today is focused in on that second target audience in terms of prospective, specifically in this case, ECR BCSER grantees. And BCSER, if you didn't already know, stands for Building Capacity in STEM Education Research, which funds the Institutes for Methods and Practices that we'll talk about today. Next slide. And so these are a set of the ECR Hub task activities that's within our purview of the ECR Hub. Today's workshop is particularly relevant to the 4th and 5th bullets here, in terms of both prospective grantees, but also an intentional focus on the BCSER institutes as well. So with that, I think I will pass it back to Terry.
So we have a couple of presenters today. Of course, myself, Dr. Terry Pickett, but also we have Dr. Karen Nyland Gibson here, who's going to talk about the Mixture Modeling Institute, Dr. Otis Johnson, who's going to talk about ICQCM, and Dr. Tracy Sweet about the QRM Scholars. And we're also happy to have Dr. Jennifer Lewis and Dr. Jesse Darrow here with us. And Dr. Jenny Lewis is going to right now give us an overview of that BCSER IMP solicitation.
Next slide. So I'm really glad to see so much interest in the Institutes for Methods and Practices part of ECR BCSER. Next slide, please. Next. As you know, BCSER has 2 tracks that are intended to build investigator capacity to carry out high-quality STEM education research. There's the individual investigator track. And next slide. There's the reason we're all here today, the Institutes and Methods and Practices. Next slide, please. What exactly is an institute? Well, if you look at the solicitation, and I hope you do many times as you're preparing your proposal, institutes provide participants with training and support in the use of cutting-edge methodological techniques and or practices that advance participant knowledge, skills, and competencies in STEM education research. The ECR Hub has very nicely put together a way to search current institutes, and I encourage you to go there to look at examples in addition to the 4 that you'll hear about today. One thing I want to call your attention to is that participants in the institute, so your potential audience, can include investigators at any stage in their career development. It does not need to be early career scholars. And also, as it says in the solicitation, your proposals are strongly encouraged to include substantive involvement of researchers who are members of groups historically underrepresented in STEM or those affiliated with minority-serving institutions, both as participants and as project personnel as appropriate to your institute. Next, please. We have pulled together a list of things that reviewers are typically looking for when they review these institute proposals. This is a very nice list, but you're going to have these slides. So I took the liberty of reframing these as a series of simpler questions that we could walk through. Next slide, please. So reviewers typically value a high degree of specific detail in these institutes. They want to really be able to envision what's going to happen. So your proposal should spell it very clearly. Who's the intended audience, and does your recruitment plan look like it will be capable of attracting that group of people? What specific knowledge, skills, or competencies will this group of people gain? And what evidence do you have that they need these skills? And then taking all of that together, thinking about your participants and what they'll gain, how will this lead to improved capacity at a national level for high quality STEM education research? You can be thinking about the future that will happen once you have set these folks forth with the support from your institute. I also encourage you to think about the budget early in the process to understand how many participants you're likely to be able to serve with your institute, and to think about the answer to those first 4 questions to discuss why this is a good number, why this is the right size for your institute. And then getting back to that concrete detail, reviewers really like to be able to put themselves in the shoes of participants and imagine exactly what the experience will be like. If you're going to have a series of workshops, what's the curriculum for each? If you're going to have mentoring opportunities, how frequent will those be? What topics will be there? The more specific you can be, the better. Then you also need to talk a little bit about yourself. So what evidence suggests that the project team will succeed in delivering this institute? What kinds of experiences have you had in the past doing similar things? And what will success look like so that you can be all through the project uncovering possible challenges to that success and dealing with them as they come up. So overall, the end result is positive. Next slide, please. The other thing I want to mention before I leave you to the important work of discussing your own ideas with current institute leaders is to think about both methods and practices. We have a lot of institutes, when you look them up, that really do a good job of cutting edge research methods. That's wonderful. We need more. But we have fewer institutes that focus on practices. Now, the solicitation lays out a series of possible practices. I got together with some colleagues and we did a little brainstorming to give you a few more examples of kinds of things that might count as practices. This is not meant to be exhaustive, just to emphasize that this solicitation is truly open to both methods and practices, depending on your intended audience and their specific needs. Next slide, please. If you have specific questions about the solicitation itself, I would encourage you to use that email address in the middle of the screen, ecrbixer@nsf.gov. And if you have questions for me, of course, my email is down on the bottom. Thanks very much.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So now for the next few minutes, we're going to hear from 4 BCSER current PIs. And we're each going to talk about 2 things, sort of a little bit about our institute, just a very high level overview. And then we're going to talk about how we decided the institute was needed. How did we figure out that maybe there's a need in the field for the training that we're providing, and then talk about how we decided on the structure of the institute, which are sort of the 2 big questions when you're thinking about these proposals. So I'm going to start. I am, as I said, and as David mentioned, I'm Dr. Terry Peggett. I am from Georgia State University. My co-PIs on my Modern Meta-Analysis Research Institute. I'm sorry, Grace, can you move the slide up? One more. Here we go. Okay. So I'm the PI of the Modern Meta-Analysis Research Institute with Drs. Josh Palanin and Ryan Williams from the American Institutes for Research. Our workshop trains 30 STEM education researchers in sort of a traditional workshop format in the summer. We have 5-day workshop where we are focused on providing an introduction to systematic review and meta-analysis for STEM education researchers who are new to this topic. So every summer we train about 30 people. We noticed the reason why we decided to do this is that we noticed that meta-analysis is a widely used method, but that many graduate programs don't actually teach this, aren't able to offer that course, and that also many published meta-analyses aren't using the most up-to-date methods. And so we thought about how we could expand access to these methods. So that's the answer to the first question. Then the second question about how did we decide on the structure? For us, we thought, let's train as many people as we can, possibly train. Where we don't expect people to be able to do a full-blown meta-analysis after the end of our workshop, but we want to get them to the place where they can then continue to develop their skills in systematic review and meta-analysis, either on their own or through other advanced workshops that we offer at, for example, the American Educational Research Association annual meetings. And we also have an advanced workshop that's funded by IES. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Karen Nyland Gibson to talk about mixture modeling.
Hi, everybody. Can I be heard? My name is Karen Nyland Gibson. I am a faculty member at University of California, Santa Barbara. I'm in the School of Education. My co-PI on this is Dr. Marcia Ng, who is a faculty member at University of California, Riverside. So this institute has a funny name, MM for Debers, because we just couldn't figure out a way to come up with a creative name that wasn't already used by other institutes. So as the name suggests, this is we are focusing on a modeling approach called mixture modeling, and it's geared towards discipline-based education researchers. So we provide like an online training and mentoring program. I mean, the name does imply that it's mixture modeling focused, but we do actually cover a lot of different things throughout the training. So it involves like a 10-day kind of formal training session online, 2 hours each, but spread out over a long time. The beginning of the training starts with data science kind of principles, like learning R and, reproducible workflows and a data science kind of component to make sure that, we're supporting scholars learning that, because some of these Debers didn't have an opportunity to learn that in their graduate training. So we're helping with that. And then we move on to some basic statistics stuff and then move on to mixture modeling training. And so the kind of formal training part is about 10 days. And then we continue on for a year. So our program is a 1-year training program where we train 10 fellows every year. And it's beyond the 10 days of training, we have continued support and mentoring. So actually just before this session, we had a meeting with our current fellows where one of the fellows shared her research, her data, her research ideas, preliminary results, and we discussed and gave feedback to her work. So the idea is that it's a wraparound kind of support. So between like data management, data analysis, and then writing and support of interpreting results that we could only do in a year, that we thought that if we really wanted to support kind of the product kind of getting out into the literature, that we needed a longer support period. So we throughout the year also we have graduate students that are providing office hours, like drop-in office hours for folks to come just drop in on their own and get some data analysis help. Me and the other PI also have office hours to meet with them if it's not necessarily like a coding or analysis problem, but more of a bigger picture. How do we frame, a question? So we are particularly, initially we targeted DBERS who were early career. Our second round of recruitment, we opened up to middle career as well, because we found that middle career scholars were more ready to dive in with their data and work on analysis, less overwhelmed with the beginning of an academic career, though we have both this year. And we are particularly interested in individuals who are conducting research that ask like critical questions about STEM education around diversity, equity, and inclusion, like the persistence of underserved populations in the STEM fields broadly, because we think that mixture modeling has an opportunity to address this in a novel way. So we in our recruitment, we kind of, ask questions around their research questions so that we can, get a sense of the kind of things that they were interested in. In terms of like how we knew that this was needed, I mean, through our multiple collaborations and over the years, we recognized like the need for this kind of training, that DBERS didn't learn this kind of, both the data science principles, reproducible workflows, open science principles, but also the statistical side. So we thought this training could help bridge that gap in a very supportive space by providing a year-long training program. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Dr. Johnson.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I am the PI of Institute in Critical Quantitative Computational Mixed Methodologies, along with Dr. Ebony McGee, and we both are at Johns Hopkins. Both of us are Bloomberg Distinguished Professors there. And I also have a role at ETS as the Edmund W. Gordon Chair of Policy Research and Evaluation. So the Institute in Critical Quantitative and Computational Methodologies began, I guess, at the start of the BCSER journey here, and we've been recently renewed for the second round of funding. Our model is that we focus on one cohort. We provide both critical theoretical perspectives and framing, and address epistemologies of research, along with the actual quantitative and computational and mixed method training, the actual technique and skills. ICQCM is a community of practice that is part of our theory of change, that we generate support, sustained uptake of skills, and also provide professional development and grant workshop opportunities for people to learn and advance in their careers. We have multiple cohorts at ICQCM. We have, of course, the NSF cohorts, but we've been renewed for all 3 of our initial cohorts. So we will be recruiting for a second William T. Grant cohort, as well as a second Spencer cohort. So we will have 6 cohorts total. What else? We get about 500 applications. So there's a great need for these types of professional development opportunities, and opportunities for people to advance their work in a culturally competent and affirming space. Like I said before, we're a community of practice. We have about 4,000 affiliates in 23 different countries. And again, our first 3 cohorts had about 80 scholars. Our next 3 cohorts will have about 62. What else? We decided, we were pretty intentional, that the PIs were not the only sources of expertise to lead such a big endeavor. So we created an Institute Fellows program, and those Institute Fellows is comprised of leading methodologists across the globe, actually, and they provide the curricular guidance to us. It includes Jameson Lopez, for instance, that teaches our Indigenous Statistics course, Jennifer Randall, who teaches our Critical Psychometric Methods and Measurement course, and Manuel Gonzalez Conche, who teaches our Structural Network Analysis course. We were pretty intentional that we didn't want this to be just an education-supported enterprise. So we definitely reached out to provide interdisciplinary support for our scholars. So we have our Python and computational methods sequence taught by Alfred Hull, who is the chief data strategist at Department of Defense. Our machine learning sequence is taught by Meredith Broussard at NYU School of Journalism, along with Momin Malik, who is a data analyst at Mayo Clinic. So we have a pretty robust support system and network affiliated with ICQCM. And lastly, the inspiration. I was an NSF tech advisor for HBCUs and MSIs in 2017. And I advised about 160 different teams from those institutions. And sadly, advising them on their grant work in the way that it was structured produced no net increase in the awards that NSF made to those places. And so this experience led me to think about something that's more involved, more in depth, that includes a way to sustain and support the type of skills we want our scholars to adopt and that they want to adopt and move forward in their work. So that's pretty much an overview of our institute, and I look forward to talking more about your ideas later on. Thanks.
Thank you. And then finally, Dr. Sweet.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Sweet. I am one of the co-PIs on the QRM for the QRM Scholars Program here at the University of Maryland. So I'm standing in for Laura Stapleton, who couldn't be here today. So basically, our program is a year-long program, and we work with 20 scholars per year, and we're actually in the end of our second, I guess, 3-year version of this. So we're on our 5th cohort. And basically what we do is we take early career scholars who are doing research in STEM education, access, and equity. And for people that are looking to develop further their quantitative skills. So this starts with a 3-day virtual fall institute where participants receive kind of short mini courses on things like research design, measurement, a little bit of I guess, regression analysis. And then we have a 2-day in-person winter institute where they'll receive a couple additional kind of mini courses. But these are and then along the way, we offer about 8 to 10 2 or 3-day long workshops on various methods. So for example, I've been teaching one on multi-level models in December, and so I'll do that. I also teach one on social network analysis. Laura does one on complex sampling and how to analyze like second data analysis. Greg Hancock does one on SEM. So the idea is that in addition to kind of these fall and winter institutes, our scholars can kind of gain kind of deep, intensive training that they might need. And then in addition, every scholar proposes a project. So the idea is that they're working on a project kind of their choice in their field, and then they're assigned to a quantitative methods faculty member as a mentor, in addition to a content mentor. So they have kind of these two mentors that help them kind of work through their project throughout the year. And then in terms of kind of why I guess I wasn't around when Laura decided to do it. But I think the impetus was really, being in a college education and seeing the need just among the faculty members and early career researchers in our own college, the demand for trying to take more classes, trying to fill in some of the gaps in their quantitative skills, and recognizing that there are education researchers all over the country that don't have their own College of Education with their own quantitative methods faculty to provide this service. And so we decided to try to provide a service in this way. So I think that's all I want to say about our program, but happy to answer other questions if people have questions.
Thank you, Dr. Sweet. Next slide. Okay, so this comes to the somewhat active part of our workshop. And can we go to the next slide? What I'd like you to do just for the next 3 minutes before we get into breakout rooms, and this is to prepare you into breakout rooms, is to do one of two things. If you're early on in the proposal development process, so for example, you haven't really thought through or are just learning about the BCSER IMP program, I'd like you to spend a couple minutes trying to think through, given what you've just heard from the 4 PIs, who are very different have very different kinds of approaches to their BCSER institutes. Try to refine your idea. Think through your idea. How does your idea align perhaps with the solicitation? What aspects of your idea that you have for a potential BCSER institute that you might need to explore more? If you're further along in your proposal development process, I'd like you to spend the next couple minutes sort of refining the structure and rationale for your proposed idea, given what you've just heard from the 4 PIs. So I'll stop talking for a couple minutes, and then we'll go into breakout rooms.
For all here, is it okay if I just talk for 10 more seconds?
Yeah.
Also showing some evaluation metrics from the first iteration, right? Showing how successful it was will be, important justification for doing it again.
Okay. Can we go to the next slide? Actually, and the next slide. Well, thank you all for participating. It was really great to have you all. I want to thank again the 3 PIs who shared their experiences and were in the breakout rooms. Just want you to know that there is a BCSER IMP office hours scheduled for December 13th. Between 2 and 3 o'clock Eastern time. This will be hosted by the ECR Hub, but the NSF program officers will be present to provide more specific answers to your questions about the solicitation, all those questions that the PIs couldn't answer. And your registration is there. And then please, if you would all do us a favor and fill out a brief feedback survey for the workshop, we would really appreciate it. But thank you again for coming, and good luck in your BCSER IMP solicitation proposal. Thank you.